Hey guys, well, here in basically for this, my thoughts, we were going to basically, as Digital Circus is kind of ending its time being relevant, as it were, um, because mostly it feels like, aside from like the merch stuff they do, which is the same with even Murder Drones, really it's kind of the fandom now to really do stuff. Every now and again we'll get like an image, but that's not really anything. So kind of like the hype of the series going, and I kind of want to throw this while it's semi still out there. So basically, I kind of just want to like go over the entire series. I love this series, but there are a lot of issues with how it ended and like how it went about. The biggest thing is, well, not the biggest thing. The thing that starts it all is glitch. Merch being like one of the most prominent reasons why they have enough money to support shows and stuff. And merch during the Digital Circus was kind of why it got some negativity, which was like they came out with the blind boxes that everyone like. At first, everyone was like, "Cool, it's nice to see different versions of them and not have to take up main some like the stands and stuff." Um, so it's nice to see that, but then it's just like every single time something that someone really really wants comes out in that set, so now you have to either pay a higher amount to get something guaranteed on like eBay or something, or you have to take a chance and maybe not even get it at all unless it was a very high common, which you had to buy a box for. Um, but the other issue is like quality, and a lot of other issues are coming up little by little. Um, that shows that like quality control isn't the greatest with it. So there's that stuff, and it's kind of like, well, the merch. It's supposed to support your shows, and if you don't check this stuff out and deal with it, eventually shows can be in trouble. Um, Moving on to kind of just glitch as itself is just like all of the shows are kind of a copy and paste. And the issue with that makes it to where Digital Circus was not given. Um, I mean, it's also like Gooseworks could have made it in this style, but if it was limited by what Glitch allows, it makes it kind of hard. Because so Glitch does short. A lot of the humor and how they go about things is kind of like Flash, like like the Flash games and Flash animations of like the early 2000s, um, which I can easily see, but it's kind of like, okay, that's nice, but we don't need the whole show to be dictated by this. And then the other issue uh is kind of like they need it to kind of like be fun, but the story needs to be simple enough from point A to point B to be in a short series where, especially Digital Circus, like Murder Drones I can see works fine because it's all about jokes and these little robots dealing with stuff. Where Digital Circus, it has real life, like living humans that they have, like they're showing that these aren't normal people that just came about. These are people with issues, and we don't really get to um go through all the chapters of how these people develop as people um by the end of the show. So it's kind of like that's kind of the biggest issue. And then there's all these big things of how the circus works and what does this mean, what does that mean, and we really don't get to go into it. It's literally a point A point B story of how can we escape the circus, and kind of what's the full origins of the circus. And that's really all that matters. in a story concept in this series. Well, there are things like, hey, this character, like Ragatha's with her mom. Um, Jax is a big mystery that we just, last episode, here you go. We did get little, like, bits and pieces to hint at stuff, but it really doesn't show much of how good it could have been. So moving on to like the episodes and like my thoughts on those. Episode 1 is the perfect start to the series, kind of like giving everyone, it's why everyone came and fell in love with it, but it's kind of like they really did not want to keep this vibe from the first episode because this is what a lot of people love, this is what they were expecting, but then it's kind of like, okay, we need to like hike it up quickly because we have a quota. So episode 1 was fine for what it is, but then it's kind of like it was thrown away immediately because they gotta just take what they know and like speed off to the end. 2 and 4, Spudsies and Candy Canyon. They are probably they are waste of episodes for how quick you need to be. But if it was a longer series, these would be amazing episodes where they're perfect examples because it's like you get little moments for the characters to build and you get to see an adventure and and like if it was a longer series you could see a lot of adventures, you could um get more time with characters, but really we didn't get the chance to sit and talk to many of these characters a lot. um like I don't even think Pomni only did like slight interactions with Gangle and Zubul. We never really got a sit down with them. Like we did get a small little section with Spudsies where there was the whole breakdown section behind, and her letting Gangle leave early, but it's kind of like Gangle didn't get that actual sit down and like explain herself. Like Kinger, um, Ragatha really was more of the bar thing. Um, but like it was like a nobody cares Ragatha, moving on. Um, so really, yeah, it's actually only getting Kinger and Jax in the end of the series that we actually get that time with Pomni to have her learn, not the audience, her learn. Um, 3 is amazing, but it feels way too early. Um, because Kinger feels like he could have done something like the Guns episode where he hints that he has creation abilities, but straight up giving him the because there people would have known from 2 this could have been an NPC the entire time, but no, he's a creator. No, it's like by the 3rd episode, we already know that he made the circus. And then the other issue is your main point, the end game is can we leave the circus? Kinger's a show of no. He lost his wife trying to like live here or figure a way out. If the creators of the dang place don't know how to leave, then there is no way out. Because you would have to literally only say that Kane is the only one who can release you, and you have to give him reason to. Episode 5, I think, even though it is the funnest episode and it goes along with what Digital Circus is supposed to be, so I love it, but yet, as someone who's supposed to want these longer series that explain it, it's the worst episode because it throws away so much potential for adventures, and it also throws away moments of it feels like a fever dream, and like you're trying to catch on to everybody's little pieces of knowledge they're giving you, and then the bar scene just says, "Here's all the characters we don't care about." Um, because we already gave Kinger his whole episode to explain his backstory and what he is, and then we wait until the very end, which is the mystery of the characters being Jax. You know, everybody else, they just the bar is literally their time to not shine, but literally explain everything, and it feels like an essay I'm getting told about, rather than have these characters have their moments to emotionally talk about it, because it's like Ragatha would have been perfect. I'll get to her when we talk about the characters of what I feel like they could have done. Um, and then episode 6, it works well for a calm before the storm episode. Um, and that's really about it, because it's just like I think it's fine for like it feels like a 2 and a 4, but it's also kind of like there's hints of bigger things here. Um, it's also the like everything is held up by strings, and those strings are starting to be strained. And then episode 7 is when those strings break. Or like they're like by a thread. Um, and 7 is just the results of Kane getting NPC episode 7 is just trying to use that phrasing I was talking about with Kinger of like, hey, if an NPC got in here, I'd confuse it with you humans. And that's what this episode's supposed to be. It's, hey, here's what would happen if it was, but it's also showing that Kane wanted this adventure. He was developing this adventure since episode 2 or even earlier. He could have been working since probably got in there or even earlier. He was just collecting data and stuff before he did it. Um, so that's really about it. Episode 8 is, I think, perfect for like the episode before the finale. I think it's perfect. Episode 9, however, it really like when you start talking to the characters and like based on what you've seen in the past episodes, you're like, where did the series go? How did these characters get any kind of development overnight? um Episode 9 is a good finale for them, but it feels like the development kind of sprung on us. um Moving into characters, I really want to like I forgot to mention these in my notes, but like the NPCs, it really feels like we could have done more with or more characters. We reused a lot of characters for a lot of things. It feels like you're hindering what Kane can do, even though you throw that Orbs Man has shown up like no adventures aside from Spudsies for Kane for Pomni. Um, and then we have like Disappearing Guy and all that. It's like these are newer characters, but we don't want to like use any of the others, like the Haunted Mansion characters. We've only seen, actually we never saw any of the Candy Canyon characters after it. And I know there's those art sculptures, they get used a lot, but it feels like we could have got more characters for a lot of the adventures. It didn't have to be like big, like in-depth roles like Gummy Goo, but it would have been like a nice little shrimp NPC just to kind of like fill in the like uniqueness of adventures. Um, I think the biggest NPC that I wish they did something with would be the sun. The moon is basically to show that an NPC can develop emotions, but like it would have been nice for like the sun being the other NPC who's existed for so long. Unless it's supposed to be like the lost her mind over time kind of situation. Um, Trying to think what else. Um, oh, the other humans. So it is kind of sad we never really got to see any of the original development team actually talk or even really do anything. I if anything, if Digital Circus ever came back or had some shorts or music, it'd be nice to actually see um the other humans be able to actually have moments to kind of show their personalities, because it's kind of like we have hints at what Scratch could have been, um with kind of like this impending doom character who basically made the situation happen so that he can exist after death. Um and then the other issues were like there's like 4 to 6 characters that we see the design on doors, but we never really get to know about them, know their names, or really similar to even the development team, which are so lore needed that these characters just kind of get dismissed. They exist, but in terms of the show's story, we are going to ignore them. You know, not the tragedy of their loss on anybody, versus where it's just like the tragedy of the production, the development team is why King Air almost goes crazy. And that's kind of like I would have loved for Ragatha to, because she's been the longest living human aside from Kinger. She's seen everybody come and go, and I think having certain things and certain people, um, I wish she would have had notes on it at them at least, because it's kind of like, you know, Ribbit was probably a very close friend of hers, and she felt that, but we really don't hear or speak it, but we do get to see it, which is a nice little touch. Um, Having Jax become an aggressive character after Ribbit's passing, so she basically loses him. Um, but it's just like things like that where it's just like I would have loved to see her reactions to these characters that we just see the designs for. Moving on to the main cast, very quickly, I'd like to knock out Kane and Kinger because they're probably the best development. Kane, I think, works well with what the show is doing. We already know that he's existed for a while. We see in episode 8, I think it was, the red eye, blue eye stuff, and it's like, okay, we kind of know that he, we see his purpose. We see like his situation. It's like it's understandable that it's just like he never gets properly corrected by any of the team. Like the development team really should have like jumped at kind of explaining to him how humans work and what is needed, because even now at this point in the timeline, he's still throwing stuff at the wall. It feels like somebody, or especially the the development team, would have been like, hey, let's kind of like do a survey based thing. That way you can actually figure out how people work, because you would have seen, hey, not everyone likes horror. Hey, not everyone likes this. Um, there's certain levels of excitement for certain things, um, and there are people who are scared of things. Like it can be a bee, and people are scared to their bones about it. And Kinger, like I was saying with episode 3, is just he would have worked so well if he had extended his story to the end. Um, it would have still worked for even the short series format if you kind of like tapped at that, and then like when at we do see that he gains sentient, like his mind backs his sanity. He gains his sanity in the darkness, but he doesn't tell us anything. We just see that he's changed in the darkness. And then by the end of the series, Pomni in episode 8 would show that bucket, and now he would be like, okay, you're doing this for a reason. Why? And then we get the whole like explanation of everything. Um, I think of course he should have said something about Queenie. That way, it's like he is not an NPC, um, and that would make more sense. Um, Gangle, I'm so sorry for Gangle fans, but I think uh, I'm not trying to like make it worse or make it or still like put words in her mouth. But Gangel's voice actor was very well known for like streaming content um, with the voice actors, and the issue is like no one came for her. They wanted Jax and Pomni and Ragatha. They really didn't come for her, and it's like that's the issue. Is she's an amazing actor. Really, she should have been given more props. But it's just the issue is aside from like the little quirkiness and little moments and just the cutesy design, that's all that Gangle has going for her. We don't get to see her do anything. And I really would have loved to see more of her hobbies. Like, she would have been one of the most creative characters for so many situations. Um, like, a big thing I was going to say is like you should give the characters their moments to figure stuff out. Pomni might be the main character, but she should be able to take a back seat when other people know stuff. Like when I'm doing with my rewrite for Miraculous, um, Shadowhorn and Ladybug, they know different alleys of information and knowledge, and they do good based on other things. Like Cat Noir should be the best fighter of the two, but usually in the main series, he's treated like a fool. And it's just like he should be more knowledgeable, better about beating and fighting off these villains. And that's kind of the situation here where it's just like these characters don't need to be the sidekick or have their relationship is built with Pomni and that's all that is. No, it would have been nice for Ragatha to be like if she has like a farm based, let her have more knowledge about animals. Gangle could have had so many creativities, or like because she likes to make stories, make her explain what's happening in because Kane makes his adventures with a story in mind. It would be nice for Gangle to catch on to that, and every now and again she would explain to other characters what's happening. Um, and I really think she could have had more speaking points. Um, Zubul, very similar. Both Gangle and Zubul are treated like background characters, even though they're part of the main cast. Zubul's issues is just like I would have liked more of like the body dysmorphia or whatever it is. I think it's more of like well, actually, no. I'm not gonna just do that because that's words in some the developer's mouth or the creator's mouth. Um, but having Zubul with that whole not feeling right in the body, it's kind of like that's like the origins of like how they them's work. Usually, it's kind of like they don't know what to do and what to really call themselves, and it's it's an unknown factor that makes it difficult. It stresses the person out. Um, and I think giving them a body that yes, it shows that and it lets them be able to choose and be kind of like freestyle their own body, but the issue is it's an issue already with what they want to do with a gender. Now it's hard because now their body is having so many options and it feels uncomfortable, and that's the issue with Zubul is I think that would have eventually made her uh abstract. Um Gingle's easily being like bullied or like dismissed. Zubul would have been like she would have abstracted based on her own issues. Well, their own issues. Um and it's just generally Zubul, like in the bar scene, I think she would probably be one of your best like conversationals. Like she would have been a good sit down and talk freely. Like they don't need to get too deep into stuff, but in general, like I think what they were trying to set up for her is that Leroy and Riley in the real life, um, they probably get to talk about it, and Leroy can get more confident in possibly transitioning because of them. Ragatha, however, is the wasted potential of the show. Um, Not only do would I like for us to unwind the whole thing with her mom and kind of being this like you have to be a perfect image of yourself every second of the day. Um, and you got to be this joy to be around and you got to it's a little weird that her mom kind of makes her more of a slave to those around her rather than it feels like I would in that normal relationship in a very common sense people put it at it's usually like the worry about yourself to get higher, but here it's kind of like oh no everyone's looking at you, you gotta make yourself look perfect or abide by them at every second of the day. And I think Ragatha's ending would have been amazing to be like the putting the mask up eventually would have gotten her uh either abstracted um because it what her mom would promise is that people would care or she would matter in a sense if she did this stuff, but her doing it did nothing for her. um but I think the biggest thing would be her blowing up on people. And I think that would have been a perfect kind of like the turn of the character where it's just like she should worry about herself a lot more. Because by pertaining to everyone, now she's getting stressed and emotional on something that could have been openly controlled and helped. Pomni, however, I love her, but it's also like she's a Mary Sue. And not to mention, she's also one of the issues of the series where it's just like we have anxiety Pomni, which a lot of people loved and came for. Which is like, what is the confused Jester gonna do this episode? And we only get her for a few episodes before she starts getting more confident in the circus. And well, yeah, there's people that are gonna be able to like once they kind of recognize the situation can snap into place, but it's kind of like we don't get to see the emotional or like mentality that she has to adapt to get okay. And really, I don't even think she has that time like Kinger makes it sound to just breathe in it, because it's like she gets anxiety until episode 3, I believe, with the talk with Kinger and like showing at the end of episode 2 that people care about her so friends can exist. um but like episode 4 is where like she instantly becomes the support or like the leader as it were. um and it feels like a snap where it's just like okay, we have two things, but she has friends and now she understands that people do feel a certain way, it's just you gotta adapt. And it just like she just snaps into place after that. The other issue is the something that Gooseworks came out and said that Pomni was originally supposed to be a hothead, and I think and she I think she said that I think her actress Lizzie, when she finally got the role, it's kind of like she morphed the character for Lizzie, more a gentle spirit that's just stressed versus originally that hothead. And it's just like I think a hot-headed Pomni would have worked well, because it's like she would have been the person to kind of like shove off Ragatha constantly. It was just like, hey, you're not doing anybody any favors, you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're mostly just annoying me at this point. Like of course, I think Pomni's good nature would have still stopped her from like going mean at her, but to show Ragatha that like there are people that have thoughts on what she's doing, um, it's just Pomni's being the most blunt of them all. Um, Zubul and Gangle are more of just like, hey, stop your stuff. Where it's just like Gangle being constantly upset over things. Like, yes, if she's got her sad mask, it's understandable, and that's just how it's got to be because that forces her into an emotional set. But even during with Happy Mask, she normally has something to complain about. Um, and she'd probably be depressed. Well, it'd feel depressing to be around someone who constantly has to be negative about stuff. And then with Zubul, it's kind of like she just likes nothing most of the time. It's like aside from like what she's normally used to, like the bar scene, um, or like normal life stuff, she wants nothing to do with the adventures. Um, so I feel like she would have been a spirit that's kind of like, okay, I'm cool with normal life. I don't need to see any fantastical elements and stuff, which people are cool to do. It's just this environment's not good for her, where fantastical is everywhere. Let's talk about Jax, though. Jax, I think what they did with Jax is fine. But I think what Goose wanted versus what we got, I think people just took Gooseworks' words, or like they took very big issue with Jax. Jax is just in general the lit down of society, and also is kind of like a very depressing and traumatic story that because of how they act to avoid dealing with issues um, that make them this way, people just kind of like snap and be aggressive towards Jax because it's just like, so we have a military father who wants to force upon this orderly slash respectful slash um your man's man, um that was trying to get pushed onto Jax, and it's just like, you like that's not something a father should do. um Provide support and nurture is what a father should do, and it's just that felt like none of what he was doing. It was more of forced an opinion on it, um, and that kind of ruins that. And that's not every military man, I will say that, but it's just like it's a story that it's a character uh, trait that happens in some media where it's just like the military man comes and tries to use the teachings and goes abouts of the military to make his life and people around him um, in that certain way. Um, and with Jax's mom, it's mostly one of those. It's another story overusage of just like the mom, something happens to the mom, and instead of being a mother, they take personal things against the child, where it's just like, um, without the father, the love they still had, well, the love that she felt for him, um, takes it out on the kid that like, hey, I lost someone I cared about, um, or it's very similar with like are to people, um, is kind of like they have a hatred for the person who did it, but if there's a kid that comes upon it, they have a disliking or a hatred towards the kid because it's a reminder of what happened. And that's something that really I like when it comes to that, where I feel like if that's going to be something you feel, you really need to definitely go into adoption and give away your child, because it's just, you will not be fit parent if this is something you're going to hold over your kid and how you develop them. Because even if you try to go out of your way to try to like force a role on yourself, you will show that you have a disliking for your child, and that can be an issue if you don't have a loving partner to kind of pick up the pieces to kind of, you know, make it more understandable and support the child in the ways that you can't. But that's an issue by the end of the time they have together. It's just like Leroy comes out with possibly the trans thing, and then it's just like, well, you're supposed to be this way, and I don't like what you're insinuating. Um, and instead of like giving comfort, love bombs them to be like, you're my kid. You're supposed to be loving towards me, and these decisions you're making for yourself are not ones I want for you. And it's a very toxic way about parenting on both ends here. And then it's kind of like it developed Leroy into who they're going to be in the circus. And it looks like they're fine once they get on their own and get their freedom, and they get supporting people to show how you're supposed to be in society. And I think Leroy developed so much better in the real world after Jax is created. And it shows that the development of them as a person just needed the right environment. And Jax being in this very confusing situation where they feel trapped, um, does not help. And then there's people who are like trying to pry, and they're gonna throw up walls. And then here's the biggest issue, which is Ribbit and Kaufmo, and just generally the like bully slash jerk part of things. Um, no, the actions and the words should not be forgiven because of trauma. That is understandable, and I do see that. But the issue is, you cannot completely go after them for it either, because it's like, well, they don't know anything different. Like I'm saying is like, the biggest issue with Ribbit is Ribbit went at it in a aggressive manner to learn. And the issue, I understand that Ribbit was probably going with is, let them talk, let them do it on their own. But the issue is, by letting Jax talk, it provided a situation where they overshared, they overtalked, and they didn't catch themselves. They just got emotional, and they ranted. And um, Jax, once they were done, was like, "Oh, I really did not want to say all that." I think once Ribbit heard about the parents and kind of figured out what was going on, definitely I would have been like, "Hey, if you are comfortable with going forward, you can go forward. But please, if you feel like this is going to be something that will affect you, uh, I'm not saying hold off, but if you feel like you need to hold off, do so." And I think that would have stopped them from parting and separating. Um, the other issue is just, uh, I'm sorry for saying this, but it's the trueness. If Cuckmo didn't stop them and didn't knock, things would have been so much better. Because the thing is, I think when the bow was presented, that is when it's like, okay, the support and the trust is there. But once there's someone who's invading that like safe haven, it disrupted that progression of um being okay. it throws it into anxiety that's trying to figure out what to do here, and in defense puts a wall up. I think if Ribbit, like, yes, he didn't really, well, Jax really didn't give um the chance to let Ribbit talk and kind of explain it, but the issue with what Ribbit was doing was just trying to preserve the friendship. Um, really didn't catch on to the whole thing of like it's BS that it's being played off as a story. And yeah, she did notice that it was BS and it was just a protection mechanic, but do something about that. Where it's kind of just like play. I would be more like I'm not worried about why, and I don't understand of like us as friends, but like is something issue with you understanding trust? Is there something with you? Um, what are you scared of? That's what I would have tackled in a conversation. Jax probably would have still been aggressive with it, but I think that's kind of the angle that best would have suited that situation. It's just all about going down the wrong avenues or not engaging or setting a situation that way Jax wouldn't be in a situation of this way. And then with Kaufmo, while yes, they were friends, they were the closest thing. Uh, Jax was the closest thing to a friend Jax had. But the issue is everybody else kind of was like they were cool with him to like be around, but like in general they were annoyed and really didn't care for him, which is okay. Not everyone's going to like one another. But the issue is, this is a situation where he can't go find other people. You're the only people he has. And making him feel bad for being himself kind of tipped him towards abstraction. And Jax is not the primary reason for that. Was he the last, like, crack to kind of like it shatter? Yes. But yet it's also like he's not the primary Jax is not the primary reason for this going wrong. Uh so yeah, it's with Ribbit it's communication issues and kind of like they're Ribbit was not a professional therapist, so would not pick up on the context clues to kind of like make them feel more supportive, make them feel more okay to come out and talk about things. Um, because just being there is not going to be the same as talking to someone who has so much trauma on certain things. And then the last thing I did want to kind of say is I really hate how uh, the community is going about the hatred of Jax. Like, yes, it is okay to dislike the character, but it is not okay to hold a full on hatred for who they are and what happened and where they went, because it's something that is just like you should allow this person to gain help. And if they have all the tools and stuff to do so, and they're still horrible afterwards, you're okay to hate them then. But you should not be like, okay, well, it's a very more it's a more in-depth version of don't judge a book by its cover. It's just like they would have been wonderful had they been given the proper support, had they been given the proper development as a human being. Um, I think having a full understanding of having someone to trust would have helped in the long run. Not to mention, it's kind of just like if Ribbit was given that time without Kaufmo knocking, it would have definitely, like, aside from like what Goose said with like the most lesbian thing would have happened had Kaufmo not knocked. But it's also just they would have shared an experience that would have made it to where it's kind of like not to sound like it's a negative thing. But it would have given Jax blackmail that they had experiences together. It feels like, hey, I know stuff about you. We've done things together that like you wouldn't want out. So it's kind of like, okay, so we're at a standoff with info. Um, and I think that would have made it more comforting for Jax. So yeah, it's just in general with Jax, it's just like the issue is not what they did with the character. Um, well, I'll have to talk about it real quick. Um, but definitely, it's just like the hatred the fandom is coming to, just because of how they went about doing actions versus like they didn't give them right tools and needs and support that they needed to do and be a decent person. And you're judging them based on something that you're judging based on the person that has nothing versus the person that they could have been. um, and the biggest issue I have with a lot of comics when they have a hatred for Drax is they leave Jax alone, like alone, like where it's just like they can't turn to nobody, they can't have nobody. Uh, People who ship everybody aside from Jax, that way Jax is just sitting there watching as everybody else gets to have somebody to rely on. And then their other issue is when they get violent with Jax, like the small little like bullying, which I'll start getting onto. Like there's this one comic I really hated, which was uh in episode 5 or something. Um, actually no, I think it was 4 or 3, where Jax does the whole baseball scene with Gangle and Ragatha, and well, it was on purpose that he did hit the ball back, but while I understand it is physically harming Gangle in a way, but it's more to shatter the mask is the thought behind it. Where in the comic, as soon as that happens, Ragatha's breaking moment happens, and instead of like getting after him, protecting Gangle, like I'll also get into, but full on just beats the man down. And it's just like, well, beats, well, yeah, well, they go by man at that point. But it's like, they take the bat just to assault them. And while some people will feel justified if Jax had done something into that degree, but it's not equal at all. It's just, hey, I broke something because, that's the quirkiness that is it's very negative and it's not good at all, but it's just like they're not same. Breaking something just because you want to like tap at that person versus straight on abusing the person is not the same. And that's what a lot of people are like, it's very Squidward torture-esque. Like, yes, they're a jerk, they're annoying to be around, but that does not allow for a reason for them to be beaten down all the time. Or like, hey, they should not like one of our big needs are human interaction or some kind of relationship with somebody, and forcing them to be separated from that is not good. um and the last thing I want to mention is the bullying thing. The issue is, I think Gooseworks made it sound like we were going to get more and explain more of this, but the only thing I really see is like desperation of like holding it together is the only thing I've seen. And of course, yes, they did some bad actions trying to hold it together, but no, there's no one that goes about tries to correct Jax in a positive manner to where uh, it actually affects them in a better way. Um, and I think the biggest issue with episode 9 is like I think I thought I knew more about it when we saw Jax's abstraction with Zubul, where it's just like it shows a little bit of a crush between Jax towards Zubul, and that's more understanding. Like the whole trope of like, you tease or slightly bully your crush. Um, and the issue that I think they were trying to come upon is the like introduction of Gangle is to be like, hey, this is the character they targeted um to basically be the way to do an action against their frustrations, which is wrong, but it's kind of like that really doesn't get shown to a severity that they're trying to show. It makes it like they were like, hey, Gangle is getting abused. They're being tormented, tortured, and I don't really see that. It feels like there should be some very very low lows that where Jax really did something so wrong. But the issue is, if you were to see that or hear about it, you would not support that person at all. And then I would stand by people with a hatred of Jax, where it's just like, that is understandable. Even in the worst kind of mentalities, you should never do something so wrong. But the issue is, we don't see or hear about any of that stuff. We just expect it to like leave it to the imagination of how bad it got. Um, but it's like they're telling two different ways about their relationship, where it's just like, yes, Gangle's gonna be ticked off at being bullied and her mask broken, but it turns out that Jax has a crush on them, and that's kind of like showing little hints versus the torture that they're trying to say that their relationship has, where we only see the exhaustion of Gangle at the end of it. Um, why can't I cry for them? And yes, just in general, it's kind of like they were a bad person. Um, but it's just like you can't also give me just that and be like, where did it come from? Where did it go, Cotton Eye Joe? So it's kind of like Gangle is just something I really think the Jackson Gangle relationship, it should have been explored in a lot more of a context. That way you could have shown uh either let it lie where it was the whole crush thing, or you really should have shown, or uh when Ragatha's trying to pull Pomni away from Jax, they really should have been like, it has had very bad moments where like Gangle, this has happened to Gangle, and Jax has not apologized for any of it. And it even got to this bad where it is horrendous and no one will forgive him for it. And there's of another big issue with how everyone views Jax. So I'm gonna finish it here. So basically, it's just Glitch or Gooseworks making it a short series rather than a long series where it needed to like explain itself. The episodes, some feel like they're supposed to be in the long format, some feel like they're in the short format. And the issue with the short format is that you're trying to tell stories of multiple characters, but you're throwing it on their shoulder rather than explaining it or letting us feel or be emotional about it. Um, and the other issue is you telling stuff so early in the show that by the time we get to it, it doesn't feel like a surprise. Um, and then it's kind of like the other issues are just like, I'm supposed to care about moments, but there's no build up. There is no emotion attached to it. It's just an essay to explain the character. And then with the characters, it's like NPCs. I really would have liked to see more. I would have liked to explore more of like the sun, um, really the older characters that abstracted. I feel like we should have explored them more for an episode or two. Or in the future, we should get a song or some talking of those characters. Um, that way we get more variety of like I would have. I think a blind box of the unseen characters would have been fine, and then a blind box of like the development team. Even though no one likes blind boxes, it kind of makes sense because it's like, hey, these are characters that we're not going to put in full production for anything, but here's some stuff for them. Um, trying to think. And then it's just like the main cast, Zubul and Gangle are background characters and they don't really get a lot of detail. Kane is good for the short content. Kinger could have been good, but a lot of the stuff is told early. Pomni, it's like they could have done more with like the hot-headedness. Um and I think the development of that character really needed to be slowed down. Ragatha is the waste of potential. They make her a one note character. They really don't explore any of the story of her or the backstory, um, or explore the like exhaustion to put the mask on to be nice for everybody. And then Jax is just the issue with Jax is they try to they tell you what you're supposed to feel, but there's nothing to show for it. Like I cannot be mad at someone fully. I can be mad at their actions and stuff, but I can't be mad at them fully because there was not enough um they were not presented ways to make them be able to heal themselves. And because there is nothing like that, they're going to be a horrible person with actions that people can't justify. But it's just, you still can't just say that person. It's very like as a Christian, you should never say go to hell because it's like, that is literally saying your whole life doesn't matter to me and you should suffer for it. And that's kind of what happens with Jackson. The fandom is just like because these little bully things or some like disliking of the character, this person should like be abstracted immediately and suffer. And then like the confusion of like, oh, there's all this stuff that's supposed to make you feel like this character did so much worse to this other character, and we don't get to see or hear about it, and it's kind of like I question the actual relationship then. So that's my 2 cents on the digital circus as a whole. I'm gonna go get some stuff done. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.